Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to a little bit of a different video where we'll be covering some of the top banned games. This week I honestly didn't feel like talking about movies, and because I just finished The Evil Within, I thought, hey, let's talk about some crazy games. And they're fucking crazy. Let's start with one of the most infamous banned horror games of all time. Manhunt. Now a lot of people know about Manhunt 2, which was even more notorious, but the original is much stranger in my opinion. Not only was there outrage from the media upon this game's release, but even the employees of Rockstar Games, the developer, were split on this one. In Manhunt, you play as death row inmate James Earl Cash, who awakens from his scheduled execution to discover that the prison officials were bribed to fake his death and deliver him to a snuff film director that wants to use him as his new star. You basically go from level to level and need to kill people. Sounds like every other game, right? Well, here's where Manhunt differed from those other games. You were rewarded for killing people in the most violent ways possible. You sneak up behind your enemies before you attack, and this crosshair appears. If you press it right away, the kill animation will be violent, but not that shocking. If you wait a few seconds though, it turns yellow, which makes the kill animation a lot more gruesome. And if you wait just a little longer, the crosshair turns red. And you can probably guess what that means. The main character practically slaughters his enemies in the most brutal way he can. And why do you kill people? Well, it's for the pleasure of the director, voiced by Brian Cox, who is talking to you through an earpiece. Every time you kill someone, he says some really questionable stuff, indicating that he's enjoying it.
Beautiful. You're warming up our audience nicely. They're going to be screaming your name, boy.
Now, even though this game is pretty sick, most players insist that it's actually a good game. And to be honest, I kind of agree. You can clearly tell that there's a lot of effort put into it, and it's not just looking for controversy to make money. The game is very cleverly designed and has smart gameplay elements as well as an awesome soundtrack. But the same can't be said about this next one. Hatred is one of the newer titles on this list, and it was just begging for its 5 minutes of fame on Fox News. In the trailer, we see a man in a creepy trenchcoat ranting about how he hates everybody and just wants to watch the world burn. All of this happens while he's loading guns and packing grenades. Then he goes outside and opens fire on random people on the sidewalk. So even in Manhunt, the people that you kill will kill you if they spot you. But here you seek out and kill people that are actively running away from you. Right at the beginning, you break into people's homes and start firing as people are begging for you to stop. At first, Steam, the platform where it was planned to be published, denied their green light, saying they won't put it up for sale. But eventually that changed. The entire game, you basically just try to shred everyone that comes in your path. So when does it end? When the entire world dies? Well, sort of. In the end, you break into a nuclear reactor with the goal of overloading it, trying to cause like Chernobyl 2. Then you straight up guess the correct password to the computer and the entire world, let's say, blows up. I remember back when this trailer came out, it was deliberately as offensive as possible. Personally, I think this game is pretty awful. There's no real story, the voice acting is overly cheesy, and a lot of the police NPCs are just plain dumb, sometimes running directly into your line of fire. But what do you guys think? Should people be able to buy a game like this? Either way, at least you sort of know what you're getting into when you're buying the game. Unlike this next one. Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. Ah yes, the good old days of the recession, my childhood. Although this military shooter franchise is known for its over-the-top action moments, there was one level that made pretty much everybody's jaw drop on the floor. In the mission No Russian, you play as a double agent in a Russian terrorist group. You're executing your next attack in an airport. You arrive at what looks like your typical TSA security checkline, only to then pull up your gun and shoot random civilians. Now, to be sort of fair, in other regions, this mission was significantly altered so that you could not shoot civilians, only the police, which is slightly less awful. But here's why this mission might be even worse than you think. Despite the game's 17+ rating, Call of Duty, at that time at least, was notoriously well known for being played by a lot of middle school and even elementary school children. I cannot imagine the shock of the parents when they found out what their kids were playing. Granted, of course, they should not have bought their kids a 17+ game, but I specifically remember in my 4th grade class, a lot of parents just didn't care. One other thing that's interesting is that the game never even prompts you to kill any of the civilians. It's not listed in the objectives either, and even though you can skip the level without penalty, most people still play it and know exactly what to do. Now let's get to arguably the most disturbing one. This one is pretty extreme, especially when you consider the time of when it came out. In Silent Hill Homecoming, a young soldier, Alex, returns home after a military discharge. Only when he arrives in his hometown, Shepherd's Glen, nothing is like he remembers. His brother is gone, there are strange cult members, and most of the city seems to be completely abandoned. And one specific part here is particularly intense. At one point in the story, we see Alex tied to a chair in a Saw-like torture dungeon. A woman with a drill talks about finishing what Alex's father couldn't. She's talking about how Alex must be killed to complete a ritualistic sacrifice. She then begins drilling into Alex's leg. Eventually, Alex manages to fight his way out, and from here on there are 2 outcomes. Either you kill the woman by using the drill on her face, or she uses it on your eye. Either way, I can't really show this because the last time I did a video like this, YouTube wasn't too stoked, but for a game that was released back in 2008, this must have made quite a splash. For the final pick, I don't necessarily have anything banned or controversial, but just a bonus personal favorite that I also think is really interesting. The Evil Within, which I already mentioned before. This is definitely the most tame one on this list, but pretty freaky nonetheless. In the game, you play as a cop who becomes trapped in this nightmare world that is really bloody. Already in the first level, you get chased by a guy with a chainsaw, and you dive into a massive pool of blood. As you go through the levels, you find yourself in some sort of post-apocalyptic alternate reality where you meet all kinds of disturbing monsters. But in my opinion, none of the levels are as strange as Chapter 9, The Cruelest Intentions. In it, you explore a dark old mansion and need to find these small hidden rooms where you find heads that are cut open. And it gets worse. When you sit down, a tape starts playing that begins explaining what the attempted medical experiment was. Then you control a machine that pushes a small needle into the brain so you can replicate the same experiment as the man on the tape. If you look to the left or to the bottom, you will find a map of the brain that will help you guide where you're supposed to stick the needle. And it gets even worse. If you stop concentrating on the protruding brain and look at the people's faces, they still blink and their eyes are darting around, indicating that they're still alive. Not gonna lie, that one dude looks like John Kramer. Anyways, those were some banned, controversial, and shocking games. I know I don't typically talk about video games, but I still hope that you guys liked it. Anyway, I hope I get to see you guys in the next one. Bye guys.